Hello, YouTube. First, I'd like to thank you for listening to these videos. I hope these videos are providing you something of value, and I hope that you're doing well. So let's play catch up and discuss what we've gone over so far. Now, we have two alternatives and two facts that we've been discussing. The two alternatives are that there either is something or someone above and beyond nature, or there is not. Now, the two facts are that humans believe they should behave in a certain way. That's the first one. And the other is that they know that they do not do so. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, the two facts are what give us clues as to which universe we live in. Now, the materialist view holds that our universe happened in an undirected fashion, and after exploding into existence, beings like us just sort of happened somewhere along the way. The religious view is that the universe was created on purpose by something above and beyond nature. It either directed events to lead to us or created things as they are, with us fully formed. Now, these are actually just the most modern iterations of these two possibilities. For instance, until the early 20th century, the materialist view didn't hold that the universe had a beginning at all, but instead held to the static model of the universe. In other words, that the universe was eternal and unchanged and would always stay so. After modern science discovered the near certainty of a beginning to the universe, what we call the Big Bang, first postulated, oddly enough, by a Catholic named George Lemaître, who was a Belgian priest, astronomer, and professor of physics at the Catholic University of Leuven. He proposed the theory of the expansion of the universe, widely misattributed to Edwin Hubble. He was the first to derive what is known as Hubble's law, and made the first estimation of what is now called the Hubble constant, which he published in 1927, 2 years before Hubble's article. So he inspired Hubble to make some of his many discoveries. And there's a lot of irony for you, since I know many atheists who somehow think that what is widely considered the greatest argument against the atheistic worldview and the materialist worldview is that the universe has a beginning, somehow helps their argument. Now, it was first made by a Catholic priest, so that's just kind of funny. Now, not to digress, but the universe's beginning is an argument so powerful against atheism that Thomas Aquinas used to argue that God existed using their static model of the universe. In other words, that the universe had always existed, because he felt taking their position was unfair and made his job way too easy. Anyway, somehow in the modern iteration, they have tried to use the Big Bang to advance their position, and they have changed their model to adapt to that. But I've never found a convincing argument for materialism that is based upon the universe having a beginning. Anyways, up to that point, the early 20th century, only the religious view held that the universe itself had a beginning, but instead that it was God that was eternal and unchanged. So both sides have considered something eternal and unchanged throughout most of history. So for 6,000 years of modern civilization, the religious view is the only one incorporating the actual facts. Maybe that should lead us to a conclusion. But in the spirit of fair play, for now we will put that aside. Now keep in mind, when speaking to someone who takes the materialist view, they have always believed that something could be eternal and unchanged. Until recent times, it was only the religious view that got it right in terms of the universe having a beginning. So the facts were pretty solid for the religious view. And it's worth considering why they got that right. But again, I only bring this up because the modern iteration of this viewpoint has convinced its adherents that there is a logical fallacy involved in believing something could always have existed. Until less than 100 years ago, that's what they believed too. So they're capable of believing it. If you get any grief for it, don't point it out to them, don't argue with them, just move on. But you can rest easy in what you believe. Your beliefs will remain consistent within the paradigm of the religious view. Only the materialist view has had to alter its tenets when new facts came along. Now, we can leave all of that behind. It was only a side note. So which universe do we live in based on the facts we have so far? Either there's something above and beyond nature, or there's not. So we'll briefly examine atheism, or materialism if you prefer. The argument against God is usually one of two things. It's either fact or feeling based. And we have to ask ourselves how both of those arguments account for the two primary facts of the moral law and how we feel we don't actually follow it. So the feeling-based argument is that the universe seems cruel and unjust, therefore how could there be a God? The fact-based argument is simply that they can imagine a world where we just sort of happened, and they'll use some sort of science like evolution to make that argument. Their first argument does bear looking at. It's powerful. I grant them its full force. I think about it quite a lot. The second does not. The first argument is sensible for any number of reasons. The second argument is as provable as the religious view. In other words, not at all. So we just sort of happened. You say, okay, how did that happen? They say evolution or the Big Bang and so on. There's no provable information there. So essentially the religious view is identical. It just substitute words like divine will and creation. Now on to the sensible argument. I've noticed that most of the feeling-based arguments brought forth by the materialist are inadvertently answered within the borders of the questions that they ask, which is also a bit of irony. But the materialist will say the universe is too senseless to allow for a God, let alone a good one. So where does the atheist get this idea of just and unjust from? Again, a man does not call a line crooked unless he has an idea of a straight line to begin with. So what is the atheist comparing this universe to when he calls it unjust? If the universe is bad, then we are part of it, and nothing raises us above it, so to speak. So why does the atheist, who is also part of the bad universe and not raised above it, since there is nothing to raise him higher, find himself in such violent reaction against it? Now, they could make the argument that it is just a personal idea of justice that they have, but if that's the case, then they also have no case against God, since their case against God completely depends on the universe genuinely being unjust, not that it simply doesn't please them at the moment. So it can't genuinely be unjust without some outside standard above and beyond itself, or at least ourselves, and that is only explained by a mind. Mindless forces of nature and matter do not have morals. So I found that most atheists, in the very act of trying to disprove God by saying that the existence that we experience is senseless, are forced to admit at least one part of the universe is quite full of sense, namely their idea of justice. Now, if you think about it, the whole universe has no meaning, let's say. We should never have found out that it has no meaning. Just as if there were no light in the universe, we should never have known it was dark. Dark would be a word without meaning. So too would justice without absolute right and wrong. Now, we live in the universe with something above and beyond nature. We know this because we have a moral law pressing upon us that comes from inside of us and outside of nature. Since we have no experience of matter doing anything other than being matter, we can pretty safely conclude that moral decisions require a mind. So a mind exists. We live in the universe with a mind above and beyond it. That's pretty safe to conclude. So as always, let's sum up and see how far we've come with what I think can be agreed upon by using facts most people would not dispute. I don't think anyone would dispute that there either is or is not a God or gods, or simply put something above and beyond material existence. There either is or isn't. We all agree with that. We all agree we have an inner monologue of right and wrong and feel that others do not follow it very well. And in our best moments, we agree that neither do we. So I think most people would agree whether they believe in God or not. There are people who do not behave very well, and sometimes neither do they. So we can see that the universe, made only of matter and random chance, does not account for there being real right and wrong, and almost all people for some reason have this idea of right and wrong that they just can't get rid of. So again, I think we can safely conclude that we live within the universe with something above and beyond it. It accounts for the one piece of inside information we have about the universe. The one and only piece of information we have about the universe that comes from something other than simple observation is that pressing upon us of a moral law explained by a mind and not mindless matter. So that's most likely the universe we're in. That is the universe we're in. Okay? So if that's the universe we're in, we need to figure out who this being is. Is there just one of him, as the monotheists claim? Is he a person like us, taking sides, loving some things, hating others? Or is he just a mindless force? So we need to consider a lot of different things, and we'll do that next time. So tune in next time when we ask the question, is God good? As always, this is only the beginning of the conversation. Please like, comment, subscribe. Remember, love yourself, love your neighbor, love conquers all. Goodbye for now.